I don't know.
That's the trouble. I tried this off, and I showed you that one book, right? Didn't I? What I answered for Kara, and already when you have somebody, I tried to tell that Cassie last night.
Mm-hmm.
This book. Look at this. This is all from
the pollen, right?
Oh,
Okay, it'll be fine.
Well, we'll try out here, and then if we get too big, we go inside.
Well, you've given some thought to what you'd like to say, right? Pretty much.
How would it be? Do you want me to add? Sometimes it would be better questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because where do I start?
You could start anywhere.
Yeah.
You start anywhere you want. It doesn't need to be chronological.
No.
You know, like things that come to the front of your mind.
If it isn't chronological, it gets really kind of mixed up durcheinander.
Well, why don't we do that then? Begin at the beginning.
Begin at the beginning.
Yeah.
Was also a song.
Where did y'all live when you were little?
Okay. I was born, the first things I can remember, I was born in Stuttgart, in a suburb, which is, see, if I would tell you this in German, you would know right away where this is, but now I just can only tell you what it is, right? Because when you tell a German a city and the thing, he would know where this is.
What was it though?
It was Stuttgart-Gablenberg. It's a suburb of Stuttgart. It's still there today. My dad moved from a village way outside of Stuttgart, which was Rommelshausen, where he had a factory with his brothers. And actually that story is kind of interwoven with the family story because the three brothers didn't get along. And therefore he moved out of the factory while he was still working for the factory, and we moved into this suburb apartment from the kind of big villa which was right on the grounds of the factory.
Oh yeah, a villa?
So, yeah, it's a real big, I think I showed you pictures of the, my grandfather was the inventor of the catheter. And his wife brought in some more money to establish the first catheter out of hard rubber, which was then a real new thing because the doctors operated with wooden catheters.
Ooh, can you imagine that?
Rubber was a brand new thing to do catheters. And later caoutchouc, caoutchouc is the material where they made rubber out of it. But then to make catheters out of it was a real invention. He had it patented as the only one at that time in the world, because it wasn't invented yet.
And what was the name of the company?
The company was Rusch, R-U-S-C-H.
Right.
And it's up to this day world known. You can get it on the internet. It comes out on
I found it on the internet.
Did you? Okay,
yeah,
then you know, right?
Yeah.
So
I'll move this over a little bit.
Yeah.
If that's all right with you. Are any of the buildings still there? Or the homes still there?
Of course. The company's home base was always Rommelshausen, which is a small village outside of Stuttgart. And my grandfather started it there and was not very liked for it because he was the first one to have such a huge areal of stuff and had places to settle his workers there. He had his own tennis court. He had his own. It brought a huge business to this little village in the 1800s.
Right.
And today, it is just like another suburb of Stuttgart.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
And the streets are named after my uncle and after my grandfather, right? So this is the background from where I came from. But because the brothers split up in the late 20s, 30s, this got finally unwoven. It took a while because they all had interests in the firm. They had to sign contracts that they wouldn't start a new firm.
No competition,
And
huh?
so therefore, there was a time when we arrived in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we went from Stuttgart. I was preschool age,
Uh-huh.
where my dad had no permission to work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to first grade, Berlin was terrible off because there were millions of workers in line for work, jobless, without food. And so therefore I always saw my father at home at his desk or never going to work, what I thought. So one time we had to get up in class and say what our fathers were.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, my father is jobless.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher laughed and said, I don't believe that, Edith, right? Because, I mean, he knew my family, that I could not comprehend that you could exist like my father did and kind of still worked on his business being at home. Right? So those are my first memories of Berlin and the terrible, terrible poorness of, I guess, what was here in the States, depression.
Yeah. Same here.
Huh? Yeah, the other things is then behind the political background that under Hitler, and I was in second grade, I think, when he came to power, and I did not hear too much of my parents except sighs or what it might be. But I guess everybody was also taken in by the fact that within years, people had jobs.
Exactly. Yeah,
and people had to eat, which is very hard for a generation today to understand.
Yeah.
I remember people coming to the door to beg for food, to ask us to beat the rugs, as it was then. You carried the rugs down to a courtyard and beat them and brought them back up for food.
To earn a meal.
Yes, earn a meal. And my mom buying children bread from a bakery. And I would say, why don't you buy them cake? And Mom would say, no, they're hungry, they need to have something substantial. So therefore, the first years under Hitler were, and I would say almost for everybody in this predicament of having no job. My dad was not affected by it, but everybody I went to school with was.
Yeah.
A few, and mostly a lot of Jewish families were out in Berlin West, and the kids were with me, and they always had money. But otherwise, it was always, my dad doesn't have a job, my dad doesn't have a job. Those are the first years I can remember. It didn't mean much to me. Even you got told in those times what it is to be hungry, what it is to be without a job, but a kid cannot really comprehend it.
That's right. Because the adults always make sure the children get fed.
That's right. I was, for instance, not allowed in German school. You take just a bread or something. Most schools was then. We have now, same as in America, dinners in school, but the old grammar schools where you started school, you took a sandwich, you would call it, and you got milk or cocoa in school, or soda, which was kind of lemon soda, so you could buy. And a lot of children could not buy milk or soda. They had kind of welfare programs, and then they had maybe bread with lard that was the cheapest, and salt. So my mother always made me a butter bread and an apple, and I would say, well, just give me the ham or the cheese, and she would say, you can eat that here. It just makes the children suffer in their mind to see you eat this way.
That was very thoughtful.
And now people grew up with this, and I think America, in the influence of, even in World War II, from what I heard and seen, cannot imagine what Germany went through and why it stumbled into the arms of Hitler.
Yeah, because after World War I, first scene, right? Everything went downhill pretty badly.
Very badly, and then there was in the 20s an upward, and kind of the business came back, and it took another dive on account of the stock market in New York, and it drew Europe with it, right? Remember the stock market crash affected Europe just as bad.
I'll be doggone.
From what I knew from my dad was that he had invested in, well, in the own medical firms, which were always affluent because everybody needed catheters, right? So, and he had some investment in dollars and gold, so it didn't affect us so much.
Right.
But we were well aware of, I think that was one thing we were always well aware of, and the times they trimmed you to be well aware of your girl. It was only girls where we went to school with, right? How they were. So there was very little snickering or intriguing going on because everybody was trying to be as nice as can be, especially when you came from a family who had everything, not to show off.
Yeah.
Showing off was the worst thing. The parents did this too. You underdressed, meaning you do not showed off that you could have, better. The better clothes came out on the weekend when you weren't in school, right? And the others you went clean. I always called it clean and pressed to school, but not extravagant.
Right.
And the mom and dad would buy expensive coats or stuff for winter, so they would last 2 years to put the hem out. And they didn't have to do that. They probably could have showered us with everything, but it was, you put money away because there could be worse times coming, right? And then my dad, in the third year, being away from the company, started a car shop.
A what?
A car shop, a dealership. This Auto Union. All what's left from Auto Union today is they still have the 5 rings on an Audi. And it used to be Audi, DKW, and Wanderer. Those were the 5 cars. And when you see today the Audi, you still see those rings in front, which represent those 5 cars. That was the dealership, and in order to start that, you have to have capital. You could not, like today, a dealership does, take things on commission. You paid for it.
Right.
You paid for it and then try to resell it to the customer. So he had to have large capital to start. He bought a store. He had a couple employees, and now I jump a couple of years, then I would say that the business was going good then. It was in 1938, 1937, that was going real good, and 1939. And I would say when he was finally out of the woods, because he had the money, but he had to always be careful how it was going. And he was doing, because the German economy came back up, right? And because the people all of a sudden made money and bought cars, he was doing pretty good. And then World War II started. And that was, I would say at that age, I was a teenager and very bewildered what was going on.
Yeah, now what age were you exactly?
I was 13.
And the year?
And the year was 1939.
39, right?
Yeah. And my dad we were out at the ocean, our summer vacation, which is the North Sea in Germany. And we knew it could go this way, but we thought maybe it goes again like Munich, and everybody finds an understanding and signs up again for whatever. And my dad got orders to report to Berlin. Even he was already in his 40s for the Army Reserves. And so we broke up our vacation tents and the hotel we had. Returned to Berlin, and it sticks in my mind about going out to a caserne. I don't even know who housed in there, whether that was a unit or whether they just used it. And my dad was it was 1st of September 1939, and my dad was in this kind of woolly, ungodly uniform, which was so hot, all covered up to the neck, and he was very subdued because he had to close his shop. My mom said she would try to keep it open for a while, but that didn't work out because they came and collected the tires from the cars first, so we had to put them up without the tires, right? We had a bunch of new cars sitting around, right?
Right.
And then they took the cars, and they gave us paper receipts from the government. And then they closed the repair shop. We had a repair shop on the side too. And then my mom had to officially close the car shop. It was just a couple months after my dad left.
Why do you suppose they closed the repair shop?
Because nobody could drive anymore.
Okay.
They rationed the gas only for doctors, firemen, people who had really a thing. So therefore the traffic, which wasn't that huge in the 30s, the same as in the States, came to a standstill. There was nobody driving anymore to go for anything but, and you weren't allowed. You had to have a special permission. So people kind of put their cars away, and then most of the time the Army came or the government came and took them for the services, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So Germany had a complete standstill, I would say, from 1940, because it was 39. I will not say it took a while. 1940 till 1945, nobody owned a car. If they did, it was like my friend, they had a vegetable shop where farmers outside of town, and there was a permit to transport that. Anything what had to do with feeding the cities and feeding the people, transporting coal, and so you got the transportation for it, and you got the permit to drive it, right?
Right.
But to sell cars was utopia then, right?
So where did y'all live at this point? Were you in the city or outside the city?
We still lived in our apartment in Berlin.
In the city?
In the city, right next to the airport Berlin Tempelhof. In the good times, I used to watch the planes come in at 12 o'clock, and you could set your potatoes or something for it. You would know that it's the machine, Lufthansa machine coming from Paris, because there weren't that many landings and takeoffs then, right? So,
yeah.
And then when the war came, that came to an absolute dead standstill, and you saw military machines, but they didn't use Tempelhof, you know, so. We lived still in our apartment, and we had all kind of drills to go to the cellar to learn how to, I guess, what to do in air raids. But at least to me, I guess my parents saw it different. It didn't sink in how serious this was till about Berlin was still functioning with beautiful movies, American movies, because America wasn't our enemy yet, right? So I saw Janet MacDonald and Nelson Eddy in Maytime. I saw Shirley Temple in the afternoon, in the matinee. So Berlin still functioned. You heard that the soldiers conquered Poland. My dad came back home after Poland, and because he was too old, they put him with the fire service, fireman.
Fireman.
Mm-hmm.
Fire department.
Which he, in the beginning, he could go home every night.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the war, he was staying there all the time. But in the beginning, there was nothing. And then I would say by 1940, 41, the first attacks came, air raids. And with every victory, celebration, whatever, there came more attacks, especially on Berlin, but also on Hamburg and Cologne. And first, you would almost take time to take the subway to take a look at the houses being destroyed. By the end of the war, if you took the subway, if you could take the subway and you found a house intact, you would say, did you see? There was a house still intact on so-and-so
Pretty
street.
much leveled, right?
So,
is your place where y'all live still standing?
yeah, again, yeah.
Yeah.
These buildings are different built than here, and they rebuild it. I mean, I have to explain to you, we left there after the first, after continuous firebombing. A couple times I was home, and the bombs would come. Fire bombs are like long sticks, and you don't see them. They came through the ceiling and landed in your closet, and you didn't see it till the closet started on fire. So that started, we were up on the 5th floor. That was the last floor. It was a huge apartment, and it had damage. And then I had to go out in the country to work a year for the farmer and a half a year for the ammunition factory. And I was not enthused by hard labor coming from being a high school kid.
Right.
But I was happy out of these nights going in the cellar 4 or 5 times, right? Leaving the dog under the bed and running. Sometimes the banister shaking.
Yeah.
Because the bombs came before we made it to the cellar. And even if they weren't a direct hit, you kind of swayed. And I would say only because the houses were built so solid that not everything fell together right away. Right? So I would say I had a good year of bombs and getting up at night and during the day and going to school and starting 2 hours of lessons and then run again. Seeing a movie, never seeing the end of it, because we had air raids during the day then sometimes too. And so you see a movie and then you get back and then they say, oh, it's too late to show the. So the next time you show your ticket, and finally people got kind of tired that it took so long. And then the movie mostly got hit, then you had to find another one. So that wasn't so good, and you didn't have that much time between what they wanted you to do. You know, they wanted you to, as long as it was still in Berlin, our school was dedicated to pick up children from children's homes, pick up dead babies, and bring them by the truckload to the morgues, I guess, if they had them. We didn't bring them there, we just put them on the trucks. And go to the stations, train stations, bring coffee, imitation coffee to the troops who go through, help children to be evacuated out in the country. And that was my first year in Berlin with the bombs. And then I had these, it was called Arbeitsdienst, work duty, what I told you, half a year in the country and half a year in the ammunition factory.
What was that called again?
Arbeitsdienst, work service.
Spell that for me.
Arbeitsdienst, Arbeitsdienst. It's work. Arbeit is work. Dienst is duty, actually, right? You didn't get paid for that. You get fed. And it was, the men had it too, but they had to go and repair streets, build anything what was destroyed out, mostly also out in the country, do drainage ditches and stuff like that. They were all younger than 18, usually just high school. And the girls did farmers' work. We had a camp where we were, and then in the morning we went out to the farmer. Usually wasn't always the same one. Those were the big farms. Today that's Poland. And there's no more Germany where I was. It was called Pommern. And we lost, well, something like you would lose Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah.
So we lost the east. But at that time it was German, and the farms were huge. They were a little bit Texas style, maybe not quite so big, but they had kind of castle type owners. Of course, the men were also on the front, and the lady of the house would be mostly on horse. But she would be always on horse because she had to go over all the fields to visit the workers, right? Now the workers were we, that's us, and a lot of Poles who were prisoners worked at the farms. We worked sometimes side by side with Poles. And potatoes, sugar beets, wheat, you name it. We came from Berlin, and I couldn't tell a sugar beet from a potato practically, right? Except what the fruit men would bring to the door. They had baskets they bring to the door of raspberries and stuff. That was my only memory of fruit and vegetables, right? So, and if you needed something, we had a farmer's market in Berlin, and we bought. But this was my experience where how hard it was to come by, because machines. There were already machines who would dig up the potatoes, but not picking them up. So we would follow the machines and pick up the potatoes. That's when you felt your back.
How many hours a day did you have to do that?
Well, we had sport in the morning, because in case we weren't active enough, right? We had an hour sport, jogging, racing, jumping, wide jumping, high jumping, and then breakfast, and then we were at the farm by 7.
Wait a minute.
She woke us up about 4:30, 4:45. And then at the farm till dawn. And summer in Germany is a long summer, so usually they try to stretch it till 8:30 in order to bring all this in. Right?
7 a.m. to 8.
Yeah. Sometimes we were allowed to come home at 6. And it depended how much had to be brought in, right? And then we had political science. Most people slept through that.
In the evening.
Yeah, after supper. We had supper. The most beloved duty was kitchen duty. To peel 180 pounds of potatoes, right? And we had food. Berlin was so...
Yeah.
I didn't think it was so bad, except for the absolute bending sometimes. The sugar beets you had to kick with you had these boots on. I mean, we were really we had a male camp of Arbeitsdienst right next to us, and in the beginning all the girls were kind of eyeing if we could go out on the weekend with them and dance, right? Mm-hmm. Well, you forgot about that because A, you looked like the last sand dune, and B, when the weekend came and you had an afternoon off, you just hit the sack and slept.
I bet.
So that went on.
So that's like 5 days a week every week, or 6 days? Or?
6 days. Sunday was off. Mm-hmm. Unless we got called in for special, that there was a storm coming or something. But Sunday was off, and we cleaned the camp then. Our rooms, did our beds, which are kind of like soldier sacks out of straw, right? Mm-hmm. You had to always shake that up good so you sleep, not in a hole. And change and wash our clothes. So that's why Sunday was off. And then after half a year, we changed to the factory. And I thought, well, that should be easy.
How old were you?
By then, I was 16 going on 17 that summer. I turned 17 in August.
The factory you said was a...
The factory will be known to you